Hi, welcome to A Gray Barn Rising. I'm here, of course, with Bootsy Beagle. I'm reading the poems this evening of the Indian poet Kabir. Of all the poets who have meant something to me in my life, Kabir is one of the select few who has really sort of reached into me from centuries before. When I first heard his work, when I first started reading his work, I felt just such a deep resonance with his vision. I had already been familiar with the Eastern wisdom traditions, but Kabir spoke about those traditions and transformed the insights of his meditation, making that practice so available to the reader, or in my case to me. So I feel very grateful for his work and to his primary translator, Robert Bly. I want to give kind of a loose reading this evening of his work, in that I don't have a lot of poems planned. I want to see where my eye falls on the page, if some poems speak particular to me this evening. But I'd like to begin with my very favorite Kabir poem that I believe I still have committed to memory, and I want to give you that poem. And it begins this way. He describes the body as a clay jug, and he talks about the divinity inside. And it goes this way. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains. All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars. The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels, and the music from the strings no one touches, and the source of all water. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friend, listen, the God whom I love is inside. Such a marvelous poem. I think it typifies the vision of Kabir. He will talk about the cosmos in its fullness and in its complexity residing within each person. I think I'll begin tonight by reading from this little chapbook that I bought in 1980 maybe, and it was $1.75. I still remember the little bookstore I got it from in Chicago. And it's just a small pamphlet of poems translated by Robert Bly. And I think I'll read a couple of these for you. There is nothing but water in the holy pools. I know. I have been swimming in them. All the gods sculpted of wood and ivory can't say a word. I know. I have been crying out to them. The sacred books of the East are nothing but words. I looked through their covers one day, sideways. What Kabir talks about is only what he has lived through. If you have not lived through something, it is not true. Kabir was the son of a Muslim weaver in Varanasi. That's the name that the town is called now. Many of the texts will describe it as Benares. It's actually believed to be the oldest continuously inhabited city on earth. And it's a city where Marianne and I spent some time when we were in India in the 90s. So he was the son of a Muslim weaver, and began his practice in what's called bhakti yoga, devotional yoga. And you're going to hear a lot of references in his work to loving the guest, loving, again, that's how he describes the divinity, loving the one. And all of this is a great love relationship which he has with the divinity. This is a nice little poem. Are you looking, it begins this way. I also should mention he was born in, the records are a little bit vague on his birth date. certainly by 1400, but some accounts have him born in 1398, and some other accounts actually have Kabir living well past 100 years. Those have not actually been verified, but I'd like to at least give you a reference for when these poems were written. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. Your shoulder is against mine. You will not find me in stupas, nor in Indian shrine rooms, nor in the synagogue, nor in cathedrals. Not in masses, not kirtans, not in legs twisting around the neck, nor in eating nothing but vegetables. When you look for me, you will find me instantly. You will find me in the tiniest house of time. Kabir says, student, tell me, what is God? He is the breath inside the breath. You'll hear a turn oftentimes near the close of a Kabir poem in which he refers to himself in third person. I think that's a beautiful movement in his work because he's also expressing a degree of non-attachment to the self rather than I and possessing these visions. He is beginning to talk about himself in the third person in a non-attached way. Oh, this is a great little poem. It goes this way. I talk to my inner lover and I say, why such rush? We sense that there is some sort of spirit that loves birds and animals and the ants. Perhaps the same one who gave a radiance to you in your mother's womb. Is it logical you would be walking around entirely orphaned now? The truth is, you turned away yourself and decided to go into the dark alone. Now you are tangled up in others and have forgotten what you once knew. And that is why everything you do has some weird failure in it. The yogis of India often talk about obstacles as opportunities, suffering and sorrow as a way into a deeper knowledge of who and what you are, and that poem certainly speaks to these issues. Here's a poem about bhakti yoga, devotional yoga. The bhakti path winds in a delicate way. On this path there is no asking and no not asking. The ego simply disappears the moment you touch him. And the joy of looking for him is so immense that you just dive in and coast around like a fish in the water. If anyone needs a head, the lover leaps up to offer his. Kabir's poems touch on the secrets of this bhakti. This, boy, I'm glad I'm just sort of letting my eye rest across the page of these poems, and my relationship to them are coming back in deep ways. This poem always blows me away. It has this incredible closing line. Previews of coming attractions in just a moment. Here it goes. I know the sound of the ecstatic flute, but I don't know whose flute it is. A lamp burns and has neither wick nor oil. A water plant blossoms and is not attached to the bottom. When one flower opens, ordinarily dozens open. The moon bird's head is filled with nothing but thoughts of the moon. And when the next rain will come is all that the rain bird thinks of. Who is it we spend our entire life loving? God, the close to that poem. Who is it we spend our entire life loving? Just always always blows me away. The darkness of night is coming along fast, and the shadows of love close in the body and the mind. Open the window to the west and disappear into the air inside you. Near your breastbone there is an open flower. Drink the honey that is all around that flower. Waves are coming in. There is so much magnificence near the ocean. Listen, sound of immense seashells, sound of bells. Kabir says, friend, listen, this is what I have to say. The guest I love is inside me. There's such ecstasy in Kabir's poems. When Marianne and I were in India, we were fortunate to actually be there at a time when the annual Kabir festival takes place in Varanasi. And to see that his life and his vision and his work is still celebrated was really deeply moving to us both when we attended the festival. Let me turn to another little chapbook. This was from Bulero Press, entitled The Fish in the Sea is Not Thirsty, another little chapbook by that Robert Bly translated of Kabir's poems. There may be some crossover of poems, so when I let my eye rest, I'm going to see if, hopefully I won't duplicate. When my friend is away from me, I am depressed. Nothing in the daylight delights me. Sleep at night gives no rest. Who can I tell about this? The night is dark and long. Hours go by. Because I am alone, I sit up suddenly. Fear goes through me. Kabir says, listen, my friend, there is one thing in the world that satisfies, and that is a meeting with the guest. And again, Kabir is referring to that deep core, however we construct the cosmos within each person. And he keeps speaking in these poems time and again of meeting that core of our own being inside of ourselves in silence. And that in Kabir's vision, that really is the only thing that satisfies us as humans, ultimately. Everything else is transitory. Let me see. I remember the closing to this poem, so as my eye fell on the page, so I'll give you the entire poem. Why should we two ever want to part? Just as the leaf of the water rhubarb lives floating on the water, we live as the great one and little one. As the owl opens his eyes all night to the moon, we live as the great one and little one. This love between us goes back to the first humans. It cannot be annihilated. Here is Kabir's idea. As the river gives itself into the ocean, what is inside me moves inside you. I think I'm going to close with that poem because I love the closing so much. What is inside me. Here is Kabir's idea. As the river gives itself into the ocean, what is inside me moves inside you. So I read, and there's a couple other books I want to mention too. I read from this little chapbook, Try to Live to See This, translated by Robert Bly. The Fish in the Sea is Not Thirsty, from Bulero Press, translated by Bly. Also readily available is the Kabir book, and this is translated by Bly. This book has many more of Kabir's poems in it, and also some beautiful prints and illustrations. I would so recommend getting this book and keeping it by your bedside, on a coffee table, opening and reading a Kabir poem every day as a kind of focal point, as a kind of meditation. And again, you can get this book readily, the Kabir book. There's 44 of the ecstatic poems of Kabir in here. While I have your attention, I want to mention the Bijak of Kabir, translated by Linda Hess and Shukdev Singh. This is from North Point Press, which is no longer publishing books, but they used to do gorgeous books, and there are many, many Kabir poems in here. And also Kabir, the Weaver's Songs. This is a book, I think, from Penguin, yes, Penguin Press. The introduction itself is really lengthy, about 95 pages, and it will give you insight into Kabir's life and into some of the themes that Kabir talks about. It was a great joy to share with you the poems this evening of Kabir. He's a poet who's meant so much to me, and I really hope you seek his work out. Thanks so much for joining. Move her little toy so you can see her face. Thanks so much for joining Bootsy and me for another episode of A Great Barn Rising.